What does it take to become the most feared man in Britain's underworld? Meet Lenny Mclean, a bare-knuckle fighter, bouncer, and actor who lived by a brutal code of ferocity and loyalty that earned him both fear and respect. Known as the Guvnor and the King of the Cobbles, Mclean carved out his legend as one of the toughest men to ever come out of London's gritty East End. But Mclean's story is far more than just raw strength and street brawls. Beyond his reputation as a bare-knuckle fighting icon, he became a cultural figure, known for his roles in films like Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, his ties to the criminal underworld, and his surprisingly tender side as a devoted family man. In this video, we'll dive deep into Lenny Mclean's extraordinary life, from his rise to infamy and legendary fights to his complex personal legacy. Stick around to discover the man behind the myth. Lenny Mclean's journey to becoming the Guvnor began in the tough streets of London's East End, where hardship and resilience were part of everyday life. Born Leonard John Mclean on April 9, 1949, he grew up in a working-class Irish family that struggled to make ends meet. His early years were defined by tragedy and adversity, shaping the fierce and unrelenting persona that would later make him a legend. Lenny's father, Leonard Mclean Sr., was a British Marine who served in World War II. After returning from the war, he contracted a debilitating illness in India that left him gravely ill. Tragically, he passed away when Lenny was just 4 years old, leaving the young boy without a father figure and his family without a steady source of support. His mother, Rose, remarried in an attempt to provide stability for her children, but instead, her choice brought chaos into their lives. Rose's new husband, Jim Irwin, became a figure of terror in the Mclean household. Irwin, a petty criminal and alcoholic, subjected Lenny and his siblings to relentless abuse. The violence was so severe that Lenny suffered multiple broken bones during his childhood, including fractures to his legs and ribs. These harrowing experiences forced him to develop an extraordinary toughness at a young age, both physically and mentally. Each act of cruelty left an indelible mark on Lenny, fueling the fire that would later drive his ferocious fighting spirit. The abuse reached a breaking point when Irwin turned his violence on Lenny's younger brother, Raymond, subjecting him to a brutal beating with a belt. This act of cruelty sparked the intervention of Jimmy Spinks, a local gangster and Lenny's great-uncle. Spinks, a hardened figure in the East End's underworld, stepped in to protect the children. In a near-fatal confrontation, Spinks attacked Irwin and threatened his life, warning him to never lay a hand on the children again. Spinks's actions brought some measure of safety to the household, but the trauma of those years stayed with Lenny, shaping his outlook on life and his approach to conflict. Despite the darkness of his childhood, Lenny's experiences forged an inner strength that would define him as a man. He learned to channel his pain and anger, using it as fuel in the fights that would come to define his early adulthood. Every victory in the ring became more than just a win. It was a way to reclaim the power he had lost as a child, and to prove that no one could ever dominate him again. By the age of 10, Lenny had already begun developing the toughness that would later become his trademark. Living in a world where survival required resilience, he quickly adapted, learning to defend himself and protect those he cared about. While many might have been broken by such an upbringing, Lenny emerged stronger, his determination to rise above his circumstances driving him forward. When the raw toughness forged in his childhood found its outlet in the streets, and eventually in the ring. Growing up in London's East End, Lenny gravitated toward a rough crowd, including local criminals, who introduced him to a life of petty crime. By the age of 13, Lenny was already well acquainted with violence and the law. Caught carrying a bayonet, he was sentenced to 18 months in a young offender institution, a sobering experience that marked his early years. Despite the challenges, McLean emerged from this period with a sharpened sense of survival and a growing realization that his physical strength and ferocity could be more than just tools for survival. They could become a livelihood. By the age of 15, Lenny had begun to see his fighting skills as his ticket to a better life. At first, these fights were informal street brawls, but they quickly became an organized way for McLean to earn a reputation and money. The turning point in Lenny's journey came almost by chance. In his late teens, his car broke down in the Blackwall Tunnel, leading him to buy a replacement from Kenny Mack, a gypsy used car salesman based in Hackney. When the new car also failed, Lenny confronted Mack, demanding a refund. Rather than giving the money back, Mack proposed a different solution: a chance to fight in one of his unlicensed boxing matches that same night. Lenny agreed, and in Mack's yard, he knocked out his opponent in under a minute. For his efforts, he walked away with a new car and $500 in cash, a fortune for a young man from the East End. This first fight marked the beginning of Lenny McLean's rise to fame as a bare-knuckle fighter. Kenny Mack, impressed by Lenny's raw power and ferocity, took him under his wing, acting as his manager and organizing more fights. These unlicensed bouts, often held in secret locations, became the proving ground for McLean's reputation. With no gloves, no rules, and high stakes, these fights were brutal, and only the toughest could survive. For Lenny, they were an arena where he thrived. Over the next decade, McLean took part in thousands of bare-knuckle fights, earning a fearsome reputation as the most dangerous street fighter in Britain. By the 1970s, he was widely regarded as the King of the Cobbles, an unofficial title that reflected his dominance in the world of underground fighting. His bouts became legendary, with stories of his strength and aggression spreading across London and beyond. Lenny's fights weren't just physical contests, they were spectacles. Crowds gathered to watch him take on all challengers, from fellow street fighters to tough men from across the UK. His opponents often left the ring battered and humiliated, while Lenny's reputation grew with each victory. To those who knew him, McLean wasn't just a fighter. He was a force of nature, a man whose sheer presence could intimidate even the bravest opponents. While his success in the ring brought him money and fame, it also solidified his reputation in the criminal underworld. Lenny's ability to dominate his opponents, combined with his ties to figures like Kenny Mack, made him a figure of respect and fear among London's toughest men. His rise to prominence was as much about his charisma and street smarts as it was about his physical prowess. By the time he reached his prime in the 1970s, Lenny McLean was a household name in the unlicensed boxing world. He had become more than just a fighter. He was an icon of toughness and resilience, a man who embodied the grit and determination of London's East End. For Lenny, every fight was a chance to prove himself, and he took on all comers with the same relentless drive that had defined his life from the beginning. One of the most defining chapters of Lenny McLean's bare-knuckle fighting career was his fierce and dramatic rivalry with Roy "Pretty Boy" Shaw. Their trilogy of fights not only captivated the underground boxing scene, but also cemented McLean's status as the undisputed Guvnor of Britain's bare-knuckle circuit. Their battles were as much about pride and reputation as they were about physical dominance, and they remain some of the most talked-about bouts in the history of unlicensed boxing. The rivalry began with their first encounter, a fight that ended in controversy and disappointment for McLean. Shaw, a former professional boxer with a polished fighting style and a flamboyant personality, was a formidable opponent. In their initial bout, Shaw emerged victorious after McLean verbally submitted, an outcome that shocked many of Lenny's supporters. However, McLean later claimed that the gloves used in the fight had been tampered with, making them too stiff to maneuver properly and giving Shaw an unfair advantage. While the defeat stung, it also fueled McLean's determination to reclaim his reputation and settle the score. The rematch came soon after, and this time McLean was ready to prove himself. With the allegations of tampered gloves behind him, Lenny stepped into the ring with a singular focus: to dominate Shaw and erase the memory of his earlier loss. From the opening bell, it was clear that McLean was fighting with a renewed ferocity. In a stunning display of power and aggression, he knocked Shaw out in the first round, sending him not just to the canvas, but out of the ring entirely. The victory was decisive and electrifying, turning the tide of their rivalry and re-establishing McLean as a force to be reckoned with in the bare-knuckle world. The final chapter of their rivalry unfolded at the Rainbow Theatre in Finsbury Park, London, in September 1978. By this point, both men had everything to prove, and the stage was set for an unforgettable showdown. The anticipation was immense, with fans from across the underground boxing scene gathering to witness what would become one of the most talked-about fights in unlicensed boxing history. In the final bout, McLean once again demonstrated his superior power and toughness. Shaw, known for his speed and skill, tried to outmaneuver McLean, but it wasn't enough to overcome the sheer force of the Guvnor. In another dramatic first-round knockout, McLean ended their rivalry in emphatic fashion, solidifying his reputation as the top bare-knuckle fighter in Britain. The victory at the Rainbow Theatre wasn't just a personal triumph, it was a statement to anyone who doubted Lenny's dominance in the sport. For McLean, the rivalry with Shaw was about more than just winning or losing. It was about respect. The battles between the two men captured the raw, unfiltered essence of bare-knuckle fighting: brutal, personal, and fueled by pride. McLean's victories over Shaw elevated his status to legendary levels, earning him the admiration of fans and the grudging respect of even his fiercest critics. Their trilogy of fights also highlighted the contrasting personalities of the two men. Shaw, the polished and self-assured fighter, seemed to embody the flash and glamour of the underground boxing scene, while McLean represented its raw and uncompromising spirit. Together, they created a rivalry that became the stuff of legend, a story that would be told and retold in the annals of unlicensed boxing. Beyond the ring, McLean worked as a bouncer in some of East London's toughest clubs, where his sheer size and ferocity made him both feared and respected. His role as a doorman wasn't just about keeping order, it was about survival in an environment where every night had the potential to turn violent. One of the most infamous stories from McLean's career as a bouncer took place at the Barbican Club in London's Smithfield Market. A rowdy stag party of 18 heavily intoxicated men began causing chaos, verbally abusing the barmaid and reducing her to tears. As the group escalated their behavior, stealing glasses, bottles, and ashtrays, McLean decided enough was enough. He confronted the group and escorted them outside, where the situation quickly turned into an all-out brawl. Locked out by the club owner, McLean faced the group alone. What happened next became the stuff of legend. McLean single-handedly incapacitated 9 of the men, leaving them injured and subdued by the time the police arrived. From his holding cell later that night, McLean shouted at the group, "You're not seeing me with drink inside me. I'm like this all the time, a stone-cold sober, raving lunatic." While charges were initially considered against McLean for grievous bodily harm, they were ultimately dropped due to the impracticality of prosecuting one man for assaulting 18 others. McLean's role as a bouncer brought him into contact with some of the most notorious figures in London's criminal underworld, including the infamous Kray twins. The Krays, who dominated organized crime in East London during the 1960s, were both feared and admired in equal measure. McClane's association with the twins added to his mystique and placed him at the center of the East End's shadowy world of gangsters, enforcers, and racketeers. In addition to the craze, McClane formed ties with other prominent underworld figures, often acting as a fixer or bodyguard. His physical prowess and reputation for swift, brutal justice made him a valuable ally and a formidable enemy. The dangers of McClane's life in the underworld were ever present. Over the years, he survived multiple violent attacks, including being shot and stabbed on separate occasions. One particularly harrowing incident involved Barry Dalton, a former bare-knuckle fighter turned protection racketeer. The feud between Dalton and McClane escalated when Dalton arrived at McClane's home armed with a shotgun, threatening Lenny and his family. Though the immediate confrontation ended without violence, Dalton was later found dead with a bullet to the head in 1992. While McClane openly denied any involvement, the murder remains unsolved, and rumors persist about the involvement of East London gangsters. Perhaps the most significant legal challenge of McClane's life came in 1992 when he was charged with manslaughter following an incident at the Hippodrome nightclub in Leicester Square. The case revolved around Gary Humphreys, a man reportedly under the influence of drugs and suffering from severe mental health issues. Humphreys had been causing chaos in the nightclub, urinating on the floor and harassing patrons. McClane admitted to giving Humphreys a backhander before ejecting him from the premises. Tragically, Humphreys died later that night, and McClane was arrested on charges of murder. During the trial, evidence emerged that Humphreys had been involved in a struggle with police officers after his ejection from the nightclub. Testimony from a pathologist revealed that a police restraint maneuver likely caused the neck injuries that led to his death. While McClane was acquitted of murder and the manslaughter charge was dropped, he was convicted of grievous bodily harm for the broken jaw Humphreys sustained and sentenced to 18 months in prison. After years of dominating the bare-knuckle boxing scene and navigating the violent underworld of East London, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels was both a critical and commercial success, grossing over $28 million on a modest budget of $1.3 million. The film's clever writing, stylish direction, and ensemble cast, including McClane, helped it achieve cult status, and it remains one of the most iconic British films of the 1990s. For McClane, the role was more than just a job, it was a chance to redefine himself in the public eye. Audiences who had known him only as a fearsome fighter now saw another side of his talent, one that proved he could command attention on the big screen as well as in the ring. Barry the Baptist also became a symbol of McClane's real-life persona, a tough, no-nonsense figure who commanded respect and inspired fear. The character's larger-than-life qualities reflected McClane's own journey from the streets of London to the heights of underground fame, making his performance feel authentic and unforgettable. For many fans of Lock, Stock, Barry the Baptist wasn't just a character. He was an extension of Lenny Mclean himself. McClane's performance in Lock, Stock also cemented his status as a cultural figure in British cinema. Despite his rough edges and violent past, he was embraced as a symbol of resilience and toughness, qualities that resonated with audiences. His on-screen presence was magnetic, and even in a cast filled with memorable characters, McClane stood out as one of the film's most compelling figures. Tragically, McClane's acting career was cut short by his untimely death in July 1998, just weeks before the release of Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. Diagnosed with lung cancer that had spread to his brain, McClane passed away at the age of 49. Guy Ritchie paid tribute to him by dedicating the film to his memory, and promotional billboards for the movie were redesigned to feature McClane prominently as a way to honor his contribution. Though his time in the spotlight was brief, Lenny McLean's transition to acting added another layer to his remarkable story. From bare-knuckle brawler to cult cinema icon, McLean left behind a legacy that transcends the boundaries of sport and entertainment, ensuring that his name and image would live on long after his final curtain call. Lenny McLean may have been known as the Guvnor, a brutal enforcer and bare-knuckle fighter, but beneath his fearsome reputation was a man deeply devoted to his family. He often spoke of how his wife and children kept him balanced, serving as a reminder of what mattered most. McLean's daughter, Kelly, later revealed that he might have shared her struggles with bipolar disorder, shedding light on the emotional battles he faced privately. Through it all, his family remained his anchor, offering him a sense of purpose beyond the fighting and notoriety that defined his public persona. In 1998, McLean shared his life story with the world through his autobiography, The Guvnor, co-written with Peter Gerard. The book offered a raw and unfiltered glimpse into the highs and lows of McLean's life, from his abusive childhood and violent career to his reflections as a husband and father. Readers were captivated by the contradictions in McLean's character, the brutal fighter who was also a fiercely loyal friend and family man. The book became a bestseller, resonating with audiences who were drawn to his authenticity and resilience. McLean's legacy extended beyond his writing. Just weeks before his passing, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels premiered, showcasing his unforgettable performance as Barry the Baptist. Director Guy Ritchie dedicated the film to McLean's memory, and the promotional materials were updated to feature him prominently, a gesture that reflected the profound impact he had on the film and those who worked with him. Tragically, McLean passed away from lung cancer on July 28, 1998, at the age of 49. His death came too soon, but his influence endured, both through his work and the stories told by those who knew him. His family continued to honor his memory, with his wife Valerie and daughter Kelly contributing to books and interviews that shed further light on McLean's life and legacy. Lenny McLean was a man of contradictions. On one hand, he was a brutal enforcer in the streets, a bare-knuckle champion who thrived in the harshest environments. On the other hand, he was a loving husband and father who cherished his family and sought to provide for them in any way he could. His story is one of resilience, loyalty, and the ability to rise above a troubled past, to leave an indelible mark on the world. Lenny McLean's life is a testament to the complexity of human nature. He was a fighter in every sense of the word, fighting to survive, to protect his family, and to carve out a legacy that would endure long after his final bout. His story reminds us that even in the harshest circumstances, there is room for love, loyalty, and redemption. So, what do you think of Lenny McLean's incredible story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more tales of fascinating individuals like the Guvnor. Until next time, stay curious and keep sleuthing.